Have you ever walked away from a conversation replaying it in your mind, realizing too late that someone had twisted your words, or that their calm smile had unsettled you more than any insult could? It leaves a sting, not because of what was said, but because you felt stripped of your ground without even raising your voice. That kind of defeat lingers, and it's in those moments we discover a hard truth. Most people don't lose because they lack intelligence, but because they give too much away too quickly. They speak before they've thought, they reveal what should have been guarded, and they mistake noise for strength. The Stoics knew this weakness well. To them, true power wasn't in overpowering others with clever talk, but in holding steady while the storm passed around you. Silence, patience and restraint became their weapons, not to deceive, but to master themselves so completely that no one else could move them. Think about it. What if you could read someone's intention before they ever spoke? What if you could shift the balance of power simply by refusing to be baited? These aren't tricks, they're ancient disciplines, sharpened over centuries, and once you see them, you can never unsee them. Stay with me. What I'm about to share may change the way you step into every room, every conversation, every hidden game of power. As we step into the first chapter, picture a man in the middle of a heated argument. His voice rises, his hands shake, his face burns red. He feels powerful in the moment, but everyone watching sees the truth. He has already lost, because the man who cannot hold himself cannot hold the room. Now, imagine the one standing opposite. Calm eyes, steady breath, silent presence. He does not flinch at the insult. He does not rush to defend himself. He lets the storm rage, and yet he remains still. Who walks away with the power? Not the loud one, always the still one. This is the essence of Stoic mastery. Emotions are not facts, they are impressions, sparks that flare and vanish. Seneca called anger a kind of madness. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, you have power over your mind, not outside events. To master stillness is to hold that truth in practice, not to erase emotion, but to command it. Think back to the last time someone pulled you into their chaos. Maybe it was an insult, a sarcastic remark, a sharp message, and before you even thought, you fired back. Maybe with raised voice, maybe with cold words. In that instant, you lost your position, you entered their frame, and the conversation was no longer yours. That is how most battles are lost, quietly, invisibly, by reaction. The Stoic chooses differently. He sees every insult as a test, every provocation as a trap. He knows that silence can cut deeper than anger ever could. Provocation loses its force the moment you choose not to give it a stage. For nothing confuses the aggressor like the man who refuses to be moved. Emotions make us human, yes, but a man who spills them at every push is not free, he is bound. What is easily read is easily played. And the Stoic's duty is not to be unreadable for vanity, but to preserve his freedom. He reveals what he chooses, when he chooses. He is not a puppet pulled by the strings of insult or praise. Let me give you a story. A Roman senator once endured public ridicule during an assembly. Everyone expected him to rise in fury, to defend himself. Instead, he smiled faintly, remained seated, and let the noise burn out. When he finally spoke, his words were measured, deliberate, and devastatingly clear. The crowd turned to him, not because he shouted, but because he had mastered the moment. That is the strength of stillness. Power lies in framing. If you are always reacting, someone else is setting the frame. They decide what matters, and you dance inside their arena. But when you remain unmoved, you define the space. You decide which battles deserve attention and which are beneath you. Most people are slaves to reflex. A rude tone makes them defensive. A delayed response makes them anxious. A harsh look makes them angry. They think they are thinking, but in truth, they are only reacting. The Stoic refuses this slavery. Discipline is the key. The pause before words. The breath before reply. That brief silence where you ask yourself, is this reaction worthy of me, or is this only a test of my discipline? That question alone separates the wise from the impulsive. Sometimes the test is public, sometimes private, but the rule is the same. Your calm is the frame. But you remain still. Maybe you nod, maybe you walk away. The silence that follows echoes longer than any defense. They expected fire, you gave them stone. They expected to drag you into their game. Instead, they found themselves stranded, their own words hanging in the air. This is not passivity. This is strategy. Think like a general, not a soldier. Soldiers respond to every arrow, every shout, every movement. The general waits. He surveys the field. He chooses when and where to act. And most of the time, restraint wins more ground than noise ever could. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That is the principle at work. Do not mirror their aggression. Do not stoop to their frenzy. Stay rooted in your own frame. The man who cannot be provoked becomes untouchable. So train yourself. The next time anger rises, pause. The next time insult burns, breathe. The next time chaos invites you in, ask, does this deserve me? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And by saying no, not in words, but in stillness, you keep your dignity intact. Here is the hard truth. Composure is not weakness, it is command. To stay calm when the world expects rage is to declare, "You cannot move me." That is strength. That is freedom. So remember this first lesson. Power is not loud, not frantic, not desperate. Power is still. Power is deliberate. Power is immovable. Hold the line inside and the rest of the world will bend to it. And once you master emotional stillness, you are ready for the next step. Moving into the second chapter, imagine a crowded room where voices collide like waves in a storm. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to prove they matter. Yet, in the middle of the noise, one man sits still, saying nothing. His silence cuts through louder than all the shouting. That is presence. That is power. Now ask yourself, why are people so afraid of silence? Because silence exposes them. It leaves space for their own thoughts to echo back, and many cannot stand what they hear. So they rush to fill the void with chatter, jokes, explanations, anything to escape the discomfort. But the Stoic does not escape. He embraces it. He lets silence stretch, like a bow drawn and held steady, knowing that tension unsettles everyone but him. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. In silence, those colors show." What people reveal when they cannot stand still is often more truthful than what they say when they feel in control. Watch them fidget. Listen to their nervous words. They are painting their inner world in front of you, and all you had to do was wait. Let me give you a picture from history. A Roman general once sat in council while arguments flew around him. His rivals mistook his quiet as weakness. But when he finally spoke, just one sentence, the entire direction of the campaign shifted. His silence had gathered the room. His words landed with the weight of iron. This is not legend. This is strategy. The man who speaks little makes every word strike harder. Here's where silence becomes your weapon. In negotiation, the one who waits longest often wins, not because he hides, but because he anchors. The other side scrambles, fills the air, offers more than they need, simply to ease the pressure. And when the quiet man finally speaks, his voice slices through, clean and undeniable. That is persuasion through restraint. Can you do the same? Can you sit across from someone and say nothing while holding their gaze? Most cannot. They start explaining themselves, revealing what they never intended, giving away the ground they thought they held. They negotiate against themselves just to end the tension. All you did was remain calm. All you did was hold the line. Even outside high-stakes battles, silence works its subtle magic. In business, a pause after a question signals confidence, not hesitation. In an interview, it tells the other person you are not desperate. In everyday conversation, the one who speaks less is valued more because his words feel rare, and rarity commands respect. Seneca warned, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." Every careless word chips away at authority. Every needless explanation lowers your ground. But the man who speaks with measure, whose silence makes others lean in, builds a reputation that follows him everywhere. He's not rushing to prove himself. He does not need to. Think of silence as a blade kept in its sheath, hidden, sharp, waiting. You don't flash it around to show you have it. You let others wonder, and when you finally draw it, no one mistakes its edge. That is how presence works. Silence sharpens your words by starving the room of them. I once knew a man who, in meetings, spoke less than anyone else. He would listen, nod, let others circle themselves with talk. And then, at the end, he would say one or two sentences that settled everything. He never raised his voice. He never chased approval. But people waited for him. They gave him space. Why? Because he had trained them to see his silence, not as absence, but as weight. This is the essence of Stoic restraint. When you don't react to every word thrown your way, when you don't chase every misunderstanding, people notice. They begin to respect you, even fear you a little, because they cannot read you. And what cannot be read cannot be controlled. Outside voices will tell you that constant expression is authenticity, but authenticity without discipline is chaos. The Stoic shows his thoughts only when he chooses. Silence is not emptiness, it is sufficiency. It says, I know who I am, I know what matters. I don't need your approval to stand tall. Let's test this truth. Imagine you're insulted in public. Everyone expects you to fight back, to defend yourself. Instead, you stay silent, meet the insult with calm eyes, and move on. That silence will echo louder than any defense. You refused their frame. You forced them into yours. That is dominance without a word. Silence also trains the soul. It teaches patience, the art of waiting while the world trembles around you. It turns discomfort into leverage. It transforms uncertainty into ground only you can stand on. When you master silence, you don't just control the room, you control yourself. Here's the deeper secret. Talk too much, and you become common, predictable. Easy to dismiss, but when you speak little, when you measure your words like gold, you become rare. And in this world, rarity is priceless. Let your voice be earned. Let people work for your perspective, because what is scarce becomes valuable. The Stoic path is not about muteness. It is about timing. It is about knowing that words, like arrows, must be released at the right moment. If you fire constantly, you waste your strength. If you hold until the target is clear, you never miss. So train yourself. Learn to sit in silence while others stumble over their need to be heard. Let them chase your stillness. Let them unravel in their explanations. Let them fight shadows of their own making. And when you finally speak, let your words be deliberate, sharp, impossible to ignore. Silence is not weakness. It is composure. It is strategy. It is the highest form of command. Master it, and you no longer need to convince. You only need to be. And from that quiet strength, you are ready to step into the next rule. Advancing to the third chapter, picture a shadow in a crowded hall. He does not announce himself. He does not demand the floor. He simply watches. He lets others talk, lets them project, lets them assume they understand. Yet all the while, he shapes the room without moving a muscle. That is the hidden strength of being strategically misunderstood. Now imagine yourself in that same hall. Most around you are open books, broadcasting their emotions, wearing their beliefs on their sleeves. Their pride, their insecurities, their secrets spilled in every sentence. There is honesty in that, yes, but also exposure. And anything exposed can be exploited. Anything predictable can be outmaneuvered. The Stoic knows this truth. Power doesn't always come from what you reveal. Often, it comes from what you withhold. Epictetus once warned, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. To be underestimated is a shield." To let others think less of you, to let them assume, is not weakness, it is cover. When people misjudge you, they relax. Their guard drops. They start speaking too much, revealing too much, believing the game is already theirs, and all you did was nod. All you did was let them think they had you figured out. Let me tell you a story. I once knew a man who never showed his full hand. In meetings, he played the part of the quiet observer. Some dismissed him as uninformed. Others believed he was slow to understand. And so they spoke freely, often exposing themselves. But when the time came, he delivered a few precise words, shifting the entire direction of the decision. People left the room uneasy, realizing they had underestimated him. That was not manipulation. That was mastery of restraint. This is where strategy meets discipline. You might downplay your knowledge in a conversation, not to deceive, but to see who overstates theirs. You might let someone believe they've cornered you, only to watch their overconfidence crumble under its own weight. You might appear indifferent while inside you are storing every detail, every slip, every truth revealed by their arrogance. This is psychological misdirection. It is not dishonesty, it is design. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. To be unlike is to refuse the easy mirror. You do not return insult for insult. You do not reveal your fury to match theirs. Instead, you let them think they've won. You give them calm, you give them silence, and when the right moment comes, you move with precision they never saw coming. Think of the quiet man in a room full of talkers. He nods politely, he listens deeply. People unburden themselves because he offers no resistance. They think his calm is passivity, but beneath that calm is calculation. Every boast, every slip of the tongue, every contradiction is filed away. And when he finally speaks, the room pivots, not because he was loud, because he was undeniable. Even in confrontation, this tactic endures. When someone insults you, pushes you, demands your reaction, you deny them. You give them no fire to feed on, perhaps only a faint smile. Perhaps a nod that says, "You cannot touch me." That unsettles them more than anger ever could. They begin to doubt themselves. They hesitate, and in that hesitation you gain the space to stay composed, to stay free. Most people play life in straight lines. What they feel is what they show. What they think is what they blurt. But you are not most people. You are deliberate. You reveal only what you choose. You remain unreadable, and in that unreadability lies your strength. To be fully known is to be vulnerable. To be strategically misunderstood is to be untouchable. Let others underestimate you. Let them think you are distracted, unprepared, harmless. Because the one they do not guard against is the one who strikes cleanest. A dagger hidden in the folds of the robe is sharper than a sword waved in the open. Do not mistake this for falsehood. It is restraint. You are not acting as someone you are not. You are refusing to give everything away. You are allowing space for people to reveal themselves. And they will. They always will. Pride makes them careless. Ego makes them loud. Overconfidence makes them blind. And you, by staying unreadable, turn their blindness into your advantage. Here is the truth. Power is not only presence. Sometimes it is absence. The pause, the ambiguity, the refusal to explain. Those who cannot tolerate not knowing will fill the silence with their own guesses. And every guess exposes them more than it exposes you. So practice this art. In your next debate, hold back more than you reveal. In your next negotiation, let them speak first and last while you remain steady. In your next conflict, let their energy exhaust itself against your stillness. Then, when you do speak, your clarity will slice through their noise like a blade through silk. The Stoic warrior does not need constant recognition. He does not need to win every small battle. He is patient, willing to be overlooked until the decisive strike. And when that strike comes, it is devastating, precisely because it was never expected. So let them misread you. Let them misjudge you. Let them grow careless, under the illusion that you are ordinary. All the while, you are watching, preparing, waiting. Because when the true edge is revealed, it will be 10 times sharper. This is how power hides in plain sight. This is how restraint becomes dominance. Be unreadable, and you will always hold the higher ground. If this truth resonates with you, pause for a moment. Subscribe so you never miss the next lesson. And in the comments, write just one word: unreadable. Let it be your reminder that mystery is not weakness, it is strength. And as you hold this lesson, prepare yourself, because the next rule will demand even more discipline. Entering the 4th chapter, imagine the sound of a drum struck again and again. At first it commands attention, but soon the rhythm fades into background noise. What is constant loses its weight. What is always present begins to feel ordinary. In a world that never stops shouting, the man who steps back becomes unforgettable. Here's where scarcity becomes your ally. Not as a game of arrogance, but as a discipline. It is the art of guarding your presence, of understanding that your time, your attention, your energy are not cheap tokens to scatter in every direction. They are measured, they are earned, and because they are rare, they grow valuable. Look around you. Most people fear absence. They reply to every message instantly, accept every invitation, and insert themselves into every conversation, not because they need to, but because they cannot stand to be unseen. They confuse being everywhere with being influential, but what they actually build is predictability. And what is predictable can never command respect. The Stoic does the opposite. He is not driven by the panic of being forgotten. He understands that absence, when chosen with intention, creates a deeper presence than constant visibility ever could. Silence sharpens his words. Distance strengthens his gravity. By withdrawing, he leaves space for others to wonder, to question, to lean in. His absence becomes a mirror, reflecting their own need for him. Consider this truth about human nature: what is scarce is always chaste. The rare jewel is valued above the common stone. The limited edition is desired more than the one without end, and the person who is not always available carries the same aura. Epictetus hinted at this when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. To withdraw from constant validation is to stop performing for others. It is to reclaim yourself." Let me share an image. Picture a meeting where voices overlap, eager to be noticed. Yet one man waits. He listens. He stays silent. And then, at the right moment, he speaks a single sentence. The room stills. Not because he demanded it, but because his restraint gave his words weight. His presence is felt more in its scarcity than in its abundance. That is the quiet force of absence turned into strength. Absence is not emptiness. It is a form of teaching. It trains others to value your time. If you are always available, they will treat you as if you have nothing else of worth. They will cancel, delay, dismiss, because you have shown them there is no cost. But when you set limits, when you pause before responding, when you reserve yourself for what matters most, they adapt. They measure their words. They show respect. They know that what is rare cannot be wasted. Think of conversation itself. The man who speaks less often forces others to lean closer. His silence creates tension, and his words, when they arrive, land with clarity. He becomes remembered not for endless chatter, but for precision. Scarcity turns even silence into a form of influence. This principle extends far beyond individuals. Entire cultures of influence are built on it. The elite circles of Rome were not accessible to everyone. Their rules were unspoken, their gatherings rare, and their silence more powerful than public proclamations. It was not about arrogance. It was about preserving value. The more restricted the access, the greater the weight of inclusion. Apply this to your own path. Stop scattering yourself in every direction. You don't need to explain where you go or why you withdraw. You don't need to be online at all hours, nor available at every call. Disappear without fanfare. Let your absence speak in your stead. Then return, not often, but precisely at the moments that matter most. And watch how your presence feels like an event, not a routine. Absence is not an act of hiding. It is an act of refining. It tells the world that you are not a commodity, that your attention is not for sale. When people see that you move on your own schedule, when they realize you are not begging to be included, they begin to align themselves with your standard. They stop assuming access. They begin earning it. The deepest strength of this principle is that it also protects you. You no longer waste energy chasing recognition. You no longer dilute yourself by being seen everywhere yet felt nowhere. You conserve your power, and in that conservation you grow sharper, more deliberate, more dangerous to mediocrity. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Scarcity answers this by teaching you to waste nothing, to place your time where it matters, to step away from what drains and return only to what builds. So let others rush to be everywhere. Let them exhaust themselves in the marketplace of noise. You remain measured. Appear less. Speak less. But when you do, let the world feel it, because what is rare becomes revered. The lesson is simple but profound. You do not need to be seen by everyone. You only need to be remembered by the right ones. That is how absence transforms into strength. And from this sharpened edge of scarcity, you step forward, ready for the next principle of unshakable power. At this stage, imagine water shaping stone. It doesn't shout, it doesn't clash, yet over time it leaves a mark deeper than any sudden strike. That is the way of quiet influence, not through force, but through reflection. Now, picture walking into a conversation. Everyone is trying to be heard. Some raise their voices, others press harder with logic. Yet the Stoic takes another path. He doesn't push, he reflects. Like holding a mirror that shows people who they are, he lets them see themselves in him. And in that moment, resistance softens. People trust what feels familiar. They lean toward what feels safe. If your tone, your pace, even your pauses align with theirs, something inside them relaxes. They stop fighting. They feel understood. And once they feel understood, the gate opens. No argument could force it open. Reflection does it quietly. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be." Be one. Reflection is exactly that. Being. It isn't about winning debates. It isn't about proving that you're smarter. It's about presence. The Stoic knows that people rarely follow the loudest voice. They follow the one who makes them feel seen. It begins with attention. You notice how they sit, how they phrase their thoughts, how fast or slow they speak. You listen beyond words. Then, gently, you match. Not as mimicry, but as alignment. Enough for them to think, he understands me. That moment changes everything. The door to influence creaks open, silently, without pressure. Everyone craves recognition. Some hide it, some deny it, but all hunger for it. The man who storms in too polished, too sharp, too different is met with walls. But the one who meets others where they are builds connection. The Stoic doesn't flatten himself to please. He adjusts just enough to create rhythm. And from rhythm, trust grows. I once watched a negotiator use this principle. His counterpart came in heated, restless, demanding. Instead of resisting, he matched the pace, leaning forward, sharp tone, quick replies. And then, slowly, he shifted. His voice lowered, his words slowed, his movements steadied. Within minutes, the other man unconsciously mirrored him back. The storm calmed. Decisions were made in clarity. Influence won not by force, but by reflection. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When people feel unheard, imagination builds enemies that aren't there. Reflection dissolves that illusion. It whispers, "You are seen, you are safe." And once fear fades, reason returns. This also applies in conflict. Someone charges in, voice raised, ready for war. You don't fuel the fire. You meet their intensity for a breath, then lower yours. Not in surrender, but in guidance. They follow, often without knowing, because fire cannot burn where there is no fuel. Reflection is not manipulation, it is moral strategy. It says, "I will not battle you head-on. I will create space where you lower your own armor, and in that space, truth can move, influence without force, authority without demand." Remember this. People do not recall every word you speak. They remember how they felt in your presence. Did they feel dismissed or did they feel understood? Mirroring, when done with discipline, creates memory. They leave not saying, "He convinced me," but feeling, "He knew me." And that feeling lasts longer than logic. Once rapport is built, the Stoic begins to guide. He slows the tempo. He shifts the tone. He asks questions that direct the flow. The other person thinks it's a natural conversation, but in reality, he has been walking on the path you set from the first moment you aligned with him. That is the hidden elegance of reflection. Influence carried in silence. And here lies the deeper truth. Leadership is not always visible. The Stoic doesn't need a title, doesn't need the spotlight. He shapes the current quietly, the way the tide shapes the shore. Others lean toward him, not because he demands it, but because he becomes the still point in their storm. So the next time you enter a conversation, don't rush to prove yourself. Don't force. Watch, listen, reflect, create alignment, and then, with patience, lead. This is how you turn presence into persuasion, and persuasion into trust. The world may prize the loud and the forceful, but water shapes stone, not the other way around. Over time, patience, presence, and reflection carve deeper paths than aggression ever could. That is the Stoic's way of leading. Quiet, steady, unshakable. From here, picture a man in a crowded hall. The air is thick with debate, voices raised, tempers flaring, but instead of joining the fray, he rises, calm and steady, and leaves the room. No words, no drama, just absence. And in that absence, the whole hall feels smaller. That is the quiet authority of walking away. Most people stay. They cling to arguments long after the point is lost. They hold to relationships long after the life has drained out of them. They remain in jobs, circles, or conflicts that grind their spirit down, all because they fear what leaving would mean. They confuse endurance with strength, when in truth, it is often only fear disguised as loyalty. A Stoic sees it differently. He knows power is not always in action. Sometimes it lies in the restraint to step back, to protect clarity, to preserve self-respect. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The same holds for staying. If it no longer serves your principles, you depart. Not with anger, not with spectacle, but with discipline. Imagine a negotiation where one side keeps pushing, dragging the conversation in circles. The weak man argues, pleads, bargains. The strong man knows his line, and when it is crossed, he stands, offers a calm nod, and leaves the table. His silence weighs heavier than any counter-argument. The next move belongs to them, not him. This is the paradox of the exit. The one who can walk away holds the power. Why? Because he cannot be trapped. He is not bound by fear of exclusion, nor by the craving for recognition. His life is built on principle, not permission. And when you cannot be held, you command respect without demanding it. Clinging, on the other hand, drains you. It ties your worth to outcomes you cannot control. It makes you beg for places that diminish you. Seneca warned against this attachment. He who is brave is free. Freedom is not only the courage to fight. It is the courage to leave. Think of argument. Someone hurls insults, waiting for your reaction. They want the fire. They expect the fight. Instead, you give them calm silence, then your absence. Later, when they replay the moment, wondering why you didn't stay, your exit becomes the sharpest response. You did not lose. You did not submit. You simply refused to waste yourself. This clarity reshapes everything. In business, your terms grow stronger because you don't chase approval. In relationships, your presence becomes valued because it is not desperate. In daily life, you move with quiet confidence because nothing outside holds you hostage. People sense it. They treat you differently. Respect flows naturally towards the man who can leave. Walking away is not bitterness, it is protection. It preserves your future by refusing to let the present consume you. It guards your time, your clarity, your energy. It keeps you from drowning in cycles that lead nowhere. And it teaches others without words that your life is guided by purpose, not by fear. So ask yourself, what are you still clinging to that you should have released long ago? What conversations, what connections, what battles do you fight only because you're afraid of the silence that follows? That silence, if chosen, can become your ally. It speaks for you. It creates space for what is better to arrive. This is the essence of Stoic departure. To leave, not in anger, but in clarity. To close the book without tearing the page. To walk away not because you are weak, but because you refuse to be ruled by what no longer serves you. And from that stillness, you step forward, lighter, sharper, untangled. The man who does not fear the exit cannot be conquered. True power does not chase attention. It moves with calm, with patience, with clarity. These 6 lessons are not tricks to control others, but disciplines to master yourself. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to keep walking this path. And in the comments, write calm power to seal it in. Carry this strength into your next step and be ready for the lesson that awaits.